Hi, I'm Sandy Sims with SDS Digital and the Accord Sequarallel. In this video tutorial, we'll have a look at the playlist conditional blocks. After using a PLFX to control the way the Sequarallel plays sequences, the conditional block adds some fundamental control over the playlist. I will also demonstrate the PLFX in this capacity as we have covered PLFX in the last video. But first, I have set up a couple of tracks tracker sequences and populated the playlist with some blocks. Here's the one sending to the VCOs. This takes only 1 bar per block, as it's 8 half-clock steps. Here's another with percussion, which is 2 bars per block. Tracks 1B is an alternate of Tracks 1A, which resides in a second group in the playlist. So a conditional block can be added by double-clicking on a cell and selecting the Add Cond quick box from the pop-up. This will open the conditional window. Like PLFX, a conditional number, but from 1 to 8, can be selected to set its parameters. Hold bars is the number of bars to wait for. Let's try holding 2 bars. Because this conditional block is the last in the group, it will simply return to the top block after 2 bars. To get back into the conditional, don't choose Add Cond again, but the Edit quick box. This goes from 1 to 64 bars, or CN, which means hold continuously. Setting the hold bars to CN will hold indefinitely, but hold until can provide an escape from this block. Let's try Tracks 2. So when Tracks 2 steps into a new block, this will exit to continue Tracks 1. As a result, the pause is only as long as the Tracks 2 block lasts. Tracks 1 blocks are 1 bar, whereas Tracks 2 blocks last 2 bars. There is an empty song with blocks stepping at every 4 bars of its loops. The conditionals until source can include a second until source. Both must be satisfied in order to exit the block. So let's add a song loop. This can be a specific song loop number, which makes sense if you want a certain tracks to play only on a certain song loop. So song loop 2, when played, will exit this conditional as long as Tracks 2 is still running. Now it will wait until the next time both conditions are true. Hold until conditions can be from external sources too, like reset. A pulse on the MIDI input jack, when patched with a TS plug, will exit this conditional block. This can be with or without the MIDI input jack configured to a reset rather than MIDI in. That's in the Tune quick box. As the MIDI jack configured to be a reset will cause all tracks to reset, that's not a good way to configure it, as the tracks will just keep resetting. Patching into the jack, a RITEM's reset output also validates this conditional block, thus play continues. Keep in mind though that the conditional blocks are always quantized to bars, or beat 1, unlike tracks blocks in the playlist, which can be any size. If you don't want to mess with the MIDI in jack, or are using it for MIDI in, then there's also the CC5 and CC6 inputs that can be used. Selecting both means that while waiting, there must be a pulse on CC5 as well as CC6 input jacks before it will continue. I'll patch both RITEM's resets into CC5 and CC6. The clock out jack, which can be an input, is a different story. The input is monitored even if set to clock out. As we are using the internal clock, there is a clock being output, so the condition is met immediately, as you can hear. In MIDI push, you can see the clock output input jack is indeed set to be a clock output. Sorry about the display vibrations. I had the sub up a bit too high. So, back in the playlist. We'll enter back into the conditional block to show you the jump to feature. The jump to row number is only obeyed if an until condition is met. Otherwise, it'll be ignored even to the timeout of the max bars. The condition will only last 2 bars. So if we set an until to tracks 2, a step of tracks 2 will validate the jump to row 6, where the tracks 1B blocks are. Now the playhead is in the second group of blocks, we could use another conditional to exit back into the first group again. But for the sake of elegance, let's use a PLFX. PLFX can be used to arm any block in the playlist, enabling the possibility of some very complex iterations indeed. Once PLFX Learn has exited to the main screen, just go back into the playlist. Select the block you wish it to arm. Double-click and scroll to arm. Press the S button. plist tracks 1 arm will appear, and we're done. So adding a PLFX onto the third block in tracks 2 will arm the first block in tracks 1. Now, when the third block in tracks 2 plays, its PLFX will arm the top block in tracks 1, which is sequence A. Most of the time you probably won't be using such elaborate schemes in the playlist, but it's nice to know they exist, just in case. Another conditional trigger is the automation track. Automations, even if empty, can be added and immediately any size from 1 bar to 999 bars, so allow a good long-term trigger, whether used by actual MIDI automations or not. The last conditional trigger is the remote MIDI input. Just leave the selection of remote highlighted, Then press a key on your keyboard or turn a CC knob or hit a pad, and this condition will learn it. This can be quite powerful as numerous keys or pads can be tapped to start different sequences that are waiting to play. The MIDI controller must be on the remote channel set in the remote quick box. There's a key on my other keyboard. Once remote is no longer highlighted, the MIDI has been captured. Now that same key can be used to satisfy this conditional block and play the blocks after it whenever I want. Notice the play didn't start until beat 1 on the clock, even though we can't hear it. Trust me, that's why there's the delay. So that pretty much covers the conditional blocks in the playlist. I hope this has helped clear up some of the mystery and also that you enjoyed this presentation. I'm Sandy Sims. Keep on patching!